it's just as confusing because much like we've been sucked into like this bullshit financial scheme from birth, we've been sucked into this bullshit food scheme from birth. Like if you're in that hospital bed, like you have no freedom. Like your freedom is gone. You are at the mercy literally of like the hospital or of your condition. Like your freedom is gone. So generational health, generational wealth, but also like your freedom. And without either one of those things, you have no freedoms. And it's like a spectrum. The later stages in their life where these people could maybe like impact their family for generations with knowledge and participate in family gatherings, their energy and their mind share is focused on just like not dying. Like I'm helping people in that very moment. They're going to be bad. And there's nothing that's being fixed here.
This is Decentralized Radio. I'm Tristan.
And I'm Ryan.
The goal of this podcast is to help educate you on how to live your most optimal life. We will host industry expert guests to shed light on topics that matter.
We are not gurus, rather two individuals who have had to pave their own path to health and vitality, independent of the centralized systems that plague modern society.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Decentralized Radio. Today, we have Michael Atwood on the line from Oshi. Michael, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm good now that I'm unmuted. I'm doing great. I've been looking at Michael's beard here, and I'm like, that's the aspiration. We're on day one. Day one, and by next year, that's the goal. I'll probably be patchy throughout here, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to give it a shot.
Beard game is strong. I actually just trimmed mine like literally 10 minutes ago because it's getting hot still. Well, It's still hot, I should say. Yeah. End of summer here. But Michael, how are things
doing the same?
Yeah, how are things going on your end? Got a lot going on with Oshi changing paths, and you're still in Texas, right? Home base?
Yeah, still in Texas, just outside of Austin. Things are going well. Things are busy. It's good. We're building, keeping it going. Don't stop.
Have you noticed the dynamic of Austin change at all in the past 6 to 12 months? Because I've heard that a lot of people have moved back to California.
Really? They moved back?
Yeah. I've heard there's been somewhat of a little exodus from Austin back to California. And then I've also heard a lot of Airbnb owners have been struggling in the Austin area. So it's kind of like this big explosion in Austin happened, and now it's kind of maybe just reverting a little bit back down, which is probably a good thing. But I'm curious if you've personally noticed that.
I haven't really. I spend most of my time about 45 minutes north of Austin. That's where I'm at. And so I'm not a city person at all. Majority of the time spent in Austin is doing like Bitcoin specific things, which is maybe one time a week. It's great, but I try to avoid the city, to be honest.
No, that's good. I think Ryan and I are both the same, and definitely me. I mean, Austin seems like a cool place to be. Like we have so many, mutual friends in the Bitcoin space, in the ranching space, in the health space that are down there. Sometimes I get FOMO, but then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I actually really love where I live, and there's not a lot of people, so it's well.
You got no fear of people overpopulating your town. At least I see that all the day here, where it's like I start driving to get from my house to my girlfriend's house, and I can see the traffic like starting to build up here, and I'm like, that's interesting. You're saying that people are moving away from Austin, because I was like, that's actually good, because my fear was like, I always thought about moving down there at some point, but I was like, now all these people are clouding in, it's going to turn into like kind of like what happened in Park City here in Utah. It's just all these like really rich Californians like coming in and like, I don't know. I don't want to say spewing their crap, but anyway, like I was that was like my hesitation. But if they're going back, then maybe there's hope on the horizon.
Yeah. I think we're all fearful.
Yeah,
we're all fearful of that. But Texas has its, limitations, or I guess things that people don't want to move there for, but we'll see. So Michael, starting, building the groundwork for Lightning and Bitcoin. I'm curious, maybe you have told me at one point, but I'm curious what your backstory is and when you kind of got really hooked onto Bitcoin. I know this is very cliche, but I feel like we have to do it with all Bitcoiners pretty much. So enlighten us. maybe it's a really good one.
Yeah. So I'd say it's somewhat interesting. So I went to school for business, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, I was always very, very health conscious. I wanted to be, maybe we'll be a physical therapist or whatever. I settled on being a travel nurse. So I was an ICU travel nurse. Of all places I went, I had to go closest to the money printer that happened to be in California. So I was up in Northern California, Redding area, taking travel assignments there and kind of bouncing around. And 2017 came around and I discovered Bitcoin. And then I discovered crypto. And then I fell down that hole and got wrecked. But ultimately, it was very fascinating to me, this whole concept of more self-sovereignty and freedom with your money and so on. I was backpacking in Patagonia, and I was finishing up the Atlas Shrugged on audiobook. Like I'm an audiobook guy. Like I love to just one foot in front of the other on the trail and then read books.
The Ayn Rand grind.
That's right. Yeah. And so that was had a pretty profound experience on me. Yeah, it was definitely a grind, but got through it. And by the end of it, though, I was like, I truly feel like my philosophy on life had changed, right? And so it was a really cool experience. Fast forward a couple months from that point, and I was then in Yosemite, and I was on another backpacking trip, and was reading the Bitcoin Standard. And that really cemented like Bitcoin. So it was a 1-2 punch, Atlas Shrugged, Bitcoin Standard. And I was like fully down the rabbit hole. From that point, I was like, I got to do whatever I can to, bring about this bright orange future, right? Because I know the odds are ever against us in terms of the ability for people to understand it and get exposed to it. And so yeah, I was in Redding, California, started a meetup. For the most part, it was just my girlfriend and I that would show up. So it was like date night, but people started trickling in, and then I started thinking like, how do we get more people involved without them having to understand Bitcoin and without me having to give them the whole spiel about Bitcoin? So we started teaming up with some local businesses to offer Bitcoin rewards whenever people paid with Bitcoin. And we got like some traction with that. So that inevitably led to Oshi, just getting people to use Bitcoin in various forms, for commerce and to earn rewards. And that's kind of what led to where we're at now. So hundreds of businesses onboarded later and many millions of sats given out in rewards. Here we are.
That's awesome. It's kind of funny because I think it's really interesting. I think the more you get into this sort of stuff, the more you learn about like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, or even just like decentralization in general, like becoming more aware of your health and all these things, sort of like just being more hyper focused on like growing individual like success, I guess, and less reliance on systems that have been built as crutches. It's fascinating to sort of like view other people's psychology or maybe like even reflect on like your own patterns from your past and on your belief systems and stuff like that and how they change. And because if we look at just sort of like the centralized systems, like centralized finance and all this stuff, we're looking at this as like, okay, we need to hedge our bets and sort of, in finance, you hear diversify all the time. I don't think most people understand like the concept behind that. But when you think about it in a lot of ways, when you diversify a lot of your finances in the conventional setting, it's still all held up in the same system. So that's why I think it's actually more valuable to sort of look like you've done outside into Bitcoin and things like this, because truly you're still stuck in that centralized paradigm. But it's sort of like that, not necessarily a complete false sense of comfort because there is diversification in there, but it's not as diversified as I think you think it is. Like everything could still be like pulled out from under you. And we see that, we saw that in like 2008. We saw that we see it all the time. It happens all the time and stuff. And we're seeing it in just the banking system over the last year or so. Sort of like the two-legged stool that we thought had three legs. And sort of, it's really interesting to just sort of see how people work their way around that and see who, I guess, sees the flaws in it and those who don't. And I guess sort of where I was leading with this sort of meandering was, when did that become apparent to you? And why is that important for people to think about? And also actually with the utilization of Bitcoin and people using it, like where have you seen successes in that? And how do we get more people to like start using Bitcoin? Like, how do we incentivize that? Because me and Tristan talk about this a lot, like going to farmers markets. Like Tristan's got a really cool sign. So it says like something like Bitcoin, like we accept Bitcoin first or something like that. I think it's really funny. But most people like don't even like think about that at all. And like, it's still, I don't see too much like exchange on the day to day. So how do we make that more popular, I guess? I'm sure we're headed in that direction, but I'd love to know what kind of how you're doing that with your business and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great question. We'll kind of go on a bit of a journey here, how we started. So we started by, look, no one's going to pay in Bitcoin if they don't have anywhere to spend it. Okay. So it really started with a lot of different education, both learning ourselves through experience, how to onboard these businesses to start accepting Bitcoin and all the tools that were available and how to pick the best tools for the right business. And so, yeah, we did that rather successfully. It turned out we didn't have a whole lot of problems getting businesses to accept it. The major problem was getting people to spend it, right? Especially if they don't understand what it is or why it exists or what money is. So ultimately, we try to incentivize people to spend Bitcoin by offering like, rewards or discounts if they pay in Bitcoin. And that's all, fine and well. But even so, changing human behavior is a bitch. I mean, it's very, very, very difficult to do. And frankly, people just really shouldn't be in the business of that. The behavior that you're trying to change should just kind of speak for itself. And it's like the path that all roads lead to, right? And so what we started doing instead is we started finding more and more ways for businesses to incentivize customers just to come to their business by offering Bitcoin rewards instead. Like, so not even having to accept it, just simply you go to this farmer's market, you pay for something in dollars through their Square point of sale, and the customer receives Bitcoin rewards. So why is that important? It's important because most people don't have a clue what Bitcoin is. And unless it's practically thrown at them, they might not have a clue what it is for quite some time. Or they'll hear about it once again, like in the next bull run, and they might buy some, but they never really sticks. Maybe they actually bought some, and by the time they actually bought some, maybe the price had come down, then they have a bad taste in their mouth. So what we started doing is actually giving customers Bitcoin rewards almost as easy as they receive coffee points. People have no issue getting coffee points or stars or this and that. Those are kind of like the those are the shit coins no one really talks about, right? Those are the small business issued shit coins. Okay. So give them sats instead. They're going to earn them for free. They're more appealing. They're more valuable. They can be transferable, exchangeable anywhere on earth effectively. And it gets people talking. So we went from trying to get businesses to accept it, which was the easy part, to really focusing heavy on trying to get consumers just to like get their first sats. Because we believe that the more sats people earn, the more they're going to be willing to spend. And so without changing their behavior in terms of like, they're used to earning rewards that they may or may not give a shit about, and they're used to spending the rewards that they may or may not give a shit about. So why not just give them Bitcoin rewards that they may or may not give a shit about, but over time, I think they're going to use them. I think they're going to spend them. And we're already seeing that. So that's kind of the path we're taking now. And it's a lot better so far.
Yeah, I think it's a good direction you guys are heading, because to me, like the earlier Oshi stuff, it's awesome having a marketplace for people to spend their Bitcoin at, and Bitcoiners themselves, at least the good ones, like the ones who are kind of gung-ho about building the circular economy, are they're happy to spend Bitcoin if it's an exchange of value for value, if it's a high quality product. But outside of that, it's like really hard. And even I would say like the average person, like there's Bitcoiners, and then there's like the average person who owns Bitcoin, and then there's no coiners. And the average person who owns Bitcoin never wants to get rid of their Bitcoin. Like they're still in that hodl only mindset because they're not really a part of this greater community that's trying to, bring this change to the mainstream. So I think it's smart. I think, just giving people some Bitcoin and they're like, well, what am I going to do with like $10 worth of Bitcoin? It's not enough to really be excited about saving or put it in cold storage. So it's almost incentivizing them to have this, dust of Bitcoin, just enough to where they can just maybe build it up. They get $100, they get $50, and then they could spend it at one of these merchants. So I think it's a good idea. When did you kind of realize that? Because that's happened, this shift in Oshi has kind of happened in the past year, right?
Correct. Yeah, we realized it just through overall like transaction volume of the merchants that we onboarded, and we realized rather quickly, like you said, and rather unsurprisingly in a way too. Like we're always going to throw things against the wall, see if it sticks, right? And that's what you do in startup world. And we realized that probably about 95% of quote unquote Bitcoiners don't want to spend their Bitcoin, and it's not up to me whether or not people want to spend their Bitcoin. We can't rely on this like altruism or like, this community effort where like, you're not a Bitcoiner unless we can't rely on that. It's not feasible, right? So everyone's going to do whatever they're going to do. And most people aren't going to spend their Bitcoin. So we realized that pretty quick, but we definitely realized the benefits of attracting consumers to Bitcoin businesses, and Bitcoin businesses appreciated that. But I think there's a far greater benefit to, kind of open people's minds up to Bitcoin as seamlessly as possible while providing the smallest of businesses or even larger businesses access to a better reward system, where, like you mentioned, dust, like most loyalty points are just dust. Like they're typically not redeemed. They're unredeemable because they don't earn enough over a particular period of time to actually, get something with them. They're just dust, right? Well, Bitcoin rewards you can issue and redeem like a Satoshi if you want, right? So that's really cool. And it can be redeemable at a variety of different businesses too, which is also really interesting. So instead of, these tiny businesses having to compete with like Starbucks rewards program that everybody knows what Starbucks is, and it's redeemable at thousands of different locations. Now you can kind of have these, local community businesses or farmers markets almost like join forces for this open loyalty network and incentivize people to use a point system that's actually valuable and worthwhile for their customers. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, because that's actually a pretty good angle to take, because like you said, I think, and we kind of talked about this pre-show, just me and you, the way most people, the majority of people that view Bitcoin, and this is the only way that I ever viewed it prior to maybe like the last 6 months, was you buy Bitcoin as sort of a stock, because you're still looking at, the problem was I was still looking at it in terms of dollars. And I think that's where most people that are kind of into it, but not maybe getting, like reading the books or getting into all the literature, they're still looking at it as like, okay, Bitcoin's worth X amount of dollars, worth $25,000 or whatever it is right now. And because I looked at it like this for a long time, where like I bought in literally at the worst time I thought I could ever buy in. It was like 65 or whatever the last super high was. I bought in like right before then. So I saw it go up like a little bit. And I was like, yeah, sweet. And then like lost all of it. They've been super negative, and then started buying more as I realized like, oh, I should probably do this. But it's getting people to use actual Bitcoin and not use it in terms of dollars that I think is sort of like the big mental shift that a lot of people have to make. And I think actually having a reward systems like Starbucks is a good incentive, because that's already a system that exists, like you said, that people can kind of grasp their mind around and people enjoy. And it's funny you mentioned that, because like I would use stuff like that all the time, like with Starbucks, like in the recent past, like all the time. And you're right, most people's like stuff is completely like useless because it never gets to the point of redeemability. But in this case, it's like redeemable like right away and people can get something out of it. So I think that's good. And I think that's actually a way that we can keep moving people forward. I kind of wanted to ask you like what roadblocks you've seen moving in this direction, or have you seen it yet from before? Because I think, like you said, inevitably things are moving all in the right direction. It's just going to take time and patience on probably our end for more people to start grasping like exchanging Bitcoin and stuff like that, because we could like get into proof of work and stuff a little bit, but I feel like we've talked about that so much on the show. But it sort of just hit me recently with this idea of like, I'll be talking to my friends about Bitcoin. And actually I was doing this early in the car. We were driving to a bank so that they could deposit their like cash they just got from a job. And I was like, you should think about like putting some money into Bitcoin and stuff, because that money you're holding right there doesn't really have anything holding it up at the end of the day. Like there's not much proof of work left in like fiat right now. And so I went down this rabbit hole with them and I was like, I'm just going to send you this podcast we're going to do today when we're done. Cause like you'll get it a little more. But like what roadblocks have you seen like trying to incentivize people in this direction? And also like what have you seen on the positive side and areas you want to like push a little further with it?
Hey friend, thanks for listening. If you really enjoy this podcast, it would be really appreciated if you left us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or subscribe to our content on YouTube. This helps us get to a larger reach and a larger audience to spread this wonderful free education.
Yeah, so in terms of roadblocks, I would say it's still relatively difficult to market a product like this whenever you're marketing it as like a Bitcoin product, right? So the cool thing though is that I could just, somebody makes a purchase on a website and then they get sats and they probably don't know what sats even are. But they're like, oh yeah, loyalty program. I get it. Like you said, it's relatable. They're like, oh yeah, I know how this works. Like, yeah, I get my sats. So that's the beauty of it. First of all, like they don't even have to know what it is. It doesn't matter. They know that experience already. But whenever you start marketing it, say to businesses as like, because that is the beauty of it as well. Like it's a Bitcoin based loyalty system, loyalty program. It is superior in many ways. Right. Because you can't just be like, oh, Bitcoin's worth this. It's like, yeah, well, so are your coffee points. Like, so you can't make that argument anymore. It's like, if you actually think Bitcoin's worth it, well, worthless, then so are your coffee points. And we can all agree. Right. So that part's easy. But I would say the biggest roadblock right now that we're working on is like, how do you market this? Because some business owners will be like, oh, Bitcoin, I don't know. So we're trying really hard to make it to where we can convey this value without getting in too much into the details of the Bitcoin aspect of things. Because for some people, that is a turnoff. It's like, well, I mean, I don't want Bitcoin to be associated with, my business because like Bitcoin is like for criminals or it's for, people boiling the oceans and all this stuff. And my response to that oftentimes is like, well, I mean, are you a criminal? I was like, no. Well, if your customers earn Bitcoin rewards, are they criminals? No. It's like, well, if you like Bitcoin, then maybe you should start rewarding your customers and be the change you want to see, because it's not any of those things, right? Like, so I think it allows, people a way, like you said, to interface with Bitcoin in ways they would have previously and really get it permeated into society. But yeah, the biggest roadblock is kind of crossing that chasm of it's a Bitcoin infused loyalty program. I wish I could just go on, start doing Facebook ads or whatever and just be like, Bitcoin loyalty programs. People be like, wow, that's so cool. But it's not there yet during a bear market, right? So that's a big thing that, it's a bit of a problem we're working through right now.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because a lot of people think they're late to Bitcoin, or it's kind of past its peak or whatever mainstream perspective you want to hold on to. But it's really true that there's a big difference in the bear and the bull markets of Bitcoin in terms of how much people care about this stuff. And to me, it's like a giant opportunity. And I was talking with you, Michael, the other week about how I used to use Lolly like a lot. And if you don't know what Lolly is, it's like this Chrome extension that you can install, similar to Honey. Honey was like a very popular Chrome extension that would just like find you coupons or have random agreements with all the major retailers, and you'd get like 1 to 3 to 4 or 5% back. But Lolly was in Bitcoin, and Booking.com, Walmart was on there for a while. So it was like whenever I had to buy like random stuff, I would just try and deliberately do it through there, because I knew if I got 5% Bitcoin back in 2019 when I started using it, that's just going to appreciate over time. So now it's like same thing. We're at 25K pre-halving. Any Bitcoin you get on like a 2% back, 5% back purchase could quadruple easily within 2 years. And then maybe you got pretty much all of your payment of what you bought in the product in Bitcoin, which is like fascinating from the consumer perspective. So I think people should be way more on board with this, but of course it is a bear market. And what I like about what you're doing compared to Lolly is obviously Lolly is just supporting the Walmarts, the Booking.coms, like the big companies, which is cool if you're, need to buy stuff like that. But really it provides an opportunity through Oshi for small companies, small startups, small homemade high quality brands to make a name for themselves. And like you said, they're now more attractive to a whole space of Bitcoiners who are pretty, willing to support high quality products. And then over time, that might just open it up for them. So it's really exciting to see. And you talk about this kind of localized, like web kind of get rewards at, Alpa Bar and spend it at Ben Peony Lane for a bottle of wine or something like that, which is cool. And these guys that checked it out, they're offering pretty substantial Bitcoin back percentages just to incentivize people. But I have a question just on the functionality. So is this all still being run through like Lightning? And maybe we should just talk about the Lightning network a little bit, because I don't think we have on this show too much. And you have a really well-versed knowledge of the Lightning network, of course. And it might just be good to do a Lightning Network 101 here. But yeah. I'm curious.
Yeah. I was going to respond to something you said first, and then we'll jump into Lightning. Lolly is really cool. Lolly and those business models, like you said, they're proven. Like Honey, like people love deals. They love getting cash back. It's a lot better to receive something from your purchase than it is like just get a discount. There's something psychological there that just gets people fired up. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but a lot of stuff just doesn't make sense. Like people want to get their product and get something bonus as opposed to just like save money, right? The cashback systems on your debit or on your credit cards are a prime example of that. People will literally run up their card just to get the bonus, right? But your observation about like how Oshi is different is spot on. We cater to the small and medium-sized businesses. Like they don't have the option to go, hey, like Chase Bank on your credit cards that you issue, whenever people spend it in my business, can they get like 5% back instead? That doesn't happen. Now, like Target and, Best Buy or Walmart, they have all those options, all those tools at their disposal that the small businesses just don't have. But, how Lolly works is, like you said, you have the browser extension. You just get directed to that business's website and complete the purchase there. So with our plugins that we have for Shopify, WooCommerce, Square, we have Stripe, and we'll have more. Clover, we'll do more. We send these customers to these businesses, and they can earn Bitcoin rewards, whatever the business wants to do. Referral bonuses, affiliate commissions, follow on social media, earn more sats, all these different things that, businesses just haven't really had access to, these small businesses. And we can get them set up for that in just a couple minutes. So I think it opens the doors to a lot for these businesses. And getting into the Lightning aspect, that is something that really enables this in a new way. So you have the Bitcoin network. Blocks are confirmed on average every 10 minutes. So that means that on average, transactions are confirmed every 10 minutes. So whenever you send a transaction to somebody, it's going to take about 10 minutes to be confirmed. And then the person you send it to, the recipient, gets their Bitcoin. The problem with that with commerce is that it's not very good user experience to have to wait for 10 minutes whenever you're like buying a coffee or something. And of course, the fees can be higher. Maybe you buy a $3 coffee and, there's a 30-cent fee. Okay, that's 10%. Like Visa and MasterCard and the payment processors of the world today are charging like 3%. So why would I use Bitcoin? What's the merchant's incentive there? And so on. There are some incentives there, but Lightning Network solves this problem by making it to where you can send and receive money, Bitcoin, instantly and nearly for free. So settlement is instant. So I can send you $3 for that coffee and Bitcoin, and it costs, a fraction of a cent, and you receive it instantly. Final settlement, no chargebacks, right? And so one way to look at this that I like to talk about, just because it's a simple kind of generalization here, is that ACH transfers, wires, are kind of like Bitcoin's blockchain, except it's like Bitcoin is, borderless and permissionless and all the amazing things about Bitcoin, right? But that's kind of in terms of the speed and like the settlement, right? Whereas Lightning is kind of like the debit and credit cards of the traditional banking system, right? Where the settlement appears to happen instantly with debit and credit cards. It really doesn't. It still takes 30 to 90 days, right, for it to actually settle or to get your money from these payment providers. Whereas, the benefit of Lightning is it happens instantly and it's far cheaper. But just to kind of give people an idea, and I mean, we could go deeper onto the Lightning stuff as well, but what Lightning enables now are these different experiences for businesses without having to be some big corporation to maybe give fractions of a cent if your customers engage with you in a certain way. Microtransactions, it's a cool concept. The word I feel like is a little buzzwordy to me personally, but just the ability for a merchant to send their customer, let's say $1 in affiliate commission and Bitcoin rewards is just something that they haven't had the ability to do, right? Unless you want to give them $1 in store credit at Walmart or $1 in store credit at your own business. But then it's not a very appealing affiliate program if that's the case, right? Oh yeah, you can just spend more money at my business for referring customers. Well, how about you can I'll actually pay you out, So that's something that Lightning enables. It's pretty fascinating. And let's zoom in a little bit more on that. So for customers, and people in the United States, let's say the developed world, it's just a fun thing. It's like a stock, right? So, but for people in other parts of the world that don't have access to banking services, they don't have a bank, they don't have access to debit or credit cards in that case, right? They can't take any payments online whatsoever. Using something like Bitcoin and particularly the Lightning Network for commerce, they now have access to that for the first time ever. That's really crazy if you think about it. They can now accept, digital payments for the first time ever. They can now send and receive money globally, instantly and near free for the first time ever. So remittances, that's why you have companies like Strike that are allowing somebody to send effectively US dollars and then turn it into pesos instantly. And so the mechanism of this is effectively, Bitcoin is exchanged for all currencies all over the world, 24/7, 365. It's never closed. So I can take $1 in US dollars. Imagine trying to send that to somebody in Mexico, $1. How much is that going to cost you? How many days is it going to take? What are all the regulations? Forget about the fact that the person you're sending it to has to actually have a bank account or something, right? Or they have to drive to some place to redeem that dollar, right? With Lightning, you can effectively say, all right, I want to send this $1, and then there are services that'll exchange that dollar for Bitcoin immediately, and then turn it back into pesos somewhere else. Exchange that Bitcoin for pesos and receive the pesos in someone's bank account there. So, or bank account or just app. Wallet now, right? So that's why people are talking about Lightning not just as like, Bitcoin as money, but as a settlement network, just a settlement layer that can settle fiat currencies if you want.
No, that's cool. I mean, like the fact that it can be, I mean, minus the instantaneous thing, like no matter what, everyone's going to love that because that's just what everyone loves anyway. Is like, how can we get it faster? That's cool. But what I love about this type of stuff is that it can be universal. And so it kind of solves, like you said, you can like convert it back into fiat pesos or whatever you want, if that's the way you want to do it. But like, if you just have Bitcoin, you just have Bitcoin, and then that can be universal. And I think that just solves like so many of the current issues that in some ways I feel like are put there to make it problematic anyways, or annoying to work with. And then you're stuck using whatever that people want you to use or whatever like that. So it's sort of like that extra freedom aspect that I think is really, really neat. And as long as it keeps going in the direction that I think it's going to go, then I think it's going to, I mean, like you said, it's allowing people that have basically had no access suddenly now have access to money they wouldn't have had. Because like you said, they don't have a bank account, they don't have XYZ. Now they can have this, and it's all universal. And I think that's what's really neat about it, because there's not anything else that's like quite like it. And also as, what's the opposite of influenced? Not influence is like the word I'm looking for. Because it's,
yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say. The people
it's
get
incorruptible. It's totally incorruptible, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's just sort of like that thing of just like continuing to like try and convince. I don't even know if it's convincing people, because like the best way to get people on board is just show them success with it. And as long as you keep doing what you're doing and people see, like whether that price is happiness, that people see you're like, they enjoy like the product or the service that you're providing, like more people will come on board, because you see like, and this is how you got into it in the first place. You see the frustration that people have with the centralized like way things are. And so it's only a matter of time. Like if you think about it, it's like all the chips are going to be moving into our, man, I'm really mixing analogies. I was going to say the chips are moving into our court, but that's balls moving into the court. You can tell I didn't really play sports when I talk about these things. But it's just like, you can constantly like, it feels like things are put in the way of Bitcoin getting to where we want it to go, whether that's through legislation or the CBDC or all this stuff that you hear about going on. But the more they kind of push against it, I feel like the more it's almost surely going to happen, because people are just going to get so much more fed up with the way you get pushed. And I think you saw that over the last couple of years as you transition from being an ICU like travel nurse into this. And I'm sure that's sort of like, it's just fascinating. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I feel like the whole world would be better off if they would just adopt these principles and start embracing them. Like eventually they're either going to have to, or some shit's going to go down. So it's just like, it's an interesting psychology, because I can already see where things are going to go on like the 50,000 foot view. I don't know how it's going to get there, but I can kind of see where hopefully it's going to end up. And so it's just a fascinating, like kind of point of view. But I guess they're like, it's having conversations like this that I think are important, because that's what gets people interested. But it's like, how do you continue to get people interested, like during the bear market and stuff like that? Because I think the issue I see with, and we kind of talked about this earlier, is that people have a lower interest now on a wider point of view because it's not doing as well. If you look at it from a wider view, it's still like the best quote stock that's ever happened in like the last 20 years. Even at the low point right now, like what was it in like the early 2010s? Like it's like crazy X that amount. And it's like, how do you capture that when it goes back into a bull? Because once it does, it's like you're going to get the same sort of issue where people are going to view it as this pump and dump sort of thing, where they're going to ride it, try to get out before it goes down again. And it's like, how do you maintain the interest? Because 99% of people are not going to get into it as deep. And you guys are already in deeper than I am, right? So it's like, it's hard to get to where I'm at. How do you get people to like just where I'm at, other than viewing it still at fiat? You know what I mean? And that's going to come through what you're doing through exchangement, and like building programs that people can kind of relate to and sort of shifting that frame of thought. But it's just sort of like, it's just a big endeavor. And so when I think about it, as positive as I am, it's like, man, there's so much work to be done to continue to move that forward, you know?
Well, yeah, I think that some, you know, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but a lot of Bitcoin companies, they are so principled, and rightfully so, because that's how this movement really like began. And they build products only for Bitcoiners. And that's great. But yeah, the key is, can you keep interest in, you know, not only Bitcoiners, but people who aren't during the bear market, right? Whenever people don't care anymore. In fact, maybe people are totally turned off to the idea, right? And so I think we need to think more and more about how to create products that are exciting during a bull market and interesting during a bear market. Like, you know, so that's why we went the loyalty route. It's like people wearing the rewards. Those rewards are going to be worth a lot more during a bull market, and they're still going to earn rewards during the bear market. And it's cool. They're like, we're good. So it's like a sly roundabout way to get people involved before they even know what's going on. And once they do know what's going on, they're going to be totally stoked about it. But again, hey, you know, once it starts going down, yeah, sure, I'll take some free sats, no problem. And I think, you know, there's a little bit of, who was it? Henry Ford. He was like, you know, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people don't know what they want in some ways, because innovation comes at you fast. You know, the printing press worked pretty damn well for a while, and it was pretty revolutionary for a while. Right now, that's like our monetary network is like the printing press of money, and it works okay, and people can control it. They can control exactly how it works, and there's all these middlemen, the presses. But now we have the internet, right? So we have the internet of money, and a lot of crazy things are going to come from that. It's really exciting. But we're still in like this printing press of money right now, but Bitcoin's changing that. So
yeah, I guess going back to Lightning and things like that, like how ready even are we is the real question. And I think that's obviously not that ready is probably the answer. And what I'm always curious about is, you know, Lightning is a great solution, and in like currently 12 year or 13, 14 years post inception. But like, what does this all look like? What does it need to look like going forward? You know, say 20 years from now, because Lightning does have a lot of challenges, and layer 3 networks, you know, nobody's going to be transacting on the main chain maybe in 40 years. And unless it's like a monumental size of Bitcoin being transferred. So I'm curious what your thoughts are there. Like, what do you see as the biggest like sticking points with Lightning? What do you see as, you know, the problems that need to be solved to really have mainstream adoption on a layer 2 network like this?
I think what's going to happen is, you know, there's going to be a time when, let's say, Square turns on Lightning payments. Okay. Now that's like, I don't know when that's going to be, but maybe I should have finished with that. But what I'm getting at there is that even if they were to turn on Lightning payments right now, no one would use it. Microscopic use. Like Cash App payments are like on Square, like you can scan with your Cash App and pay. Like, I don't think hardly anybody uses it. I mean, certainly people use it, but I don't think it's used very often. People just use their card, right? And they could just as easily just use their Cash App, right? A lot of people have Cash App. They just don't. So turning on a Lightning payment thing there probably wouldn't do much. But where I think it's going is over time, big businesses, common household names are going to start implementing Lightning and Bitcoin functionality within these applications, right? They're going to start, whether it's you can earn Bitcoin for doing this, or now you can buy Bitcoin through us, like let's say Venmo, PayPal. They've already started to do all this. It's going to slowly increase, like, because it is wise for these businesses to do this. But it's, let's say, I wouldn't say unwise, but it's a bit too early for them to just go like gung ho into it whenever interest is like so low. So this next bull run, let's say, like this next cycle and whatever, the next 5 years, I think we're going to see an influx of businesses integrating it, just tiptoeing in. And I think that's how it's going to get really sticky. We oftentimes focus on like, oh, we're building products like a Bitcoin only product for Bitcoiners. I think the most dramatic change and kind of adoption is going to happen by traditional companies putting Bitcoin in there, like very small and iterative steps, which will inevitably feed into these like Bitcoin focused builders and companies. And yeah, I mean, I think that part's inevitable. You know, we're seeing companies that have integrated it in. We're hearing rumors of other companies integrating it in, or at least being ready to integrate it in whenever they feel consumer demand is ready. And, you know, is their appetite is large enough for it, or let's just say, whenever more and more people are like stoked about it again, number go up, starts doing its thing, and you know, they'll try it again. You know, you had like Tesla, we're accepting Bitcoin as payment. Like that moved the needle a lot, I think, even though very few people probably paid with Bitcoin, just hearing about it. How many people just heard about Bitcoin through Elon Musk the last cycle? Like one could even say like, how much is Elon Musk responsible for some of the price increases in Bitcoin? Like just putting it out there, like I think we underestimate how big that is. And I think a lot of people, and it's reasonable in a way, like, we don't need them, or we don't need this, or we don't need that, mass adoption, who cares? That's fine. Like I get it, but people are going to start adopting it whether we like it or not. And they're probably going to start adopting it through companies that really are only doing it because it moves their company's, you know, bottom line, because they want to plug into the hype. So I'm kind of in the camp that like more people using Bitcoin in any way is a positive, as long as over time they're going to get shepherded into like the direction of like, yeah, do it in a more self-sovereign way and make sure you hold your own keys. And I think that part's inevitable as well. In the meantime, you know, just get as many people thinking about it as possible.
Are you interested in 100% grass-fed, grass-finished bison meat? I'm excited to be a partner with Falls Family Ranches. Based in Wyoming, Falls Family Ranches is raising high-quality bison meat the way nature intended. As a native large ruminant of North America, bison is one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can consume. If you're interested in trying out their bison boxes, use code Tristan, Tristan, 10 for 10% off your first order.
Yeah, I think it's like the slow and steady steps. It's going to always take longer than people anticipate, which is a good thing, because clearly it's not ready. You know, technology advances just, you know, fast enough to catch up with adoption. It's kind of like, you know, your battery of your cell phone or just the functionality of anything, right? It's like, it's just good enough. And then the next one comes out and it's, you know, it's better. And they could make probably a better one, but that's by design. But in general, it's going to take time. And we've talked to a lot of folks on this podcast about, you know, just Bitcoin adoption and the mainstream. And, you know, we're talking about a multi-generational effort. So it's probably going to, you know, be some time before anything is close to perfect in terms of like second layer payment system. But at the end of the day, like you're saying, right now, the biggest mover of the needle is kind of these, you know, hype trains and BlackRock and Elon Musk and just the price increases post halving in the bull run. And yeah, you have to take that at face value. It is a good thing, but you know, you're going to get, say, 100 people on board, and the next bear, 92 of them might be gone, but 8 of them stayed. And maybe 5 of those kind of got really, really hung up on Bitcoin and are now free thinking. Maybe they're taking control of their health and just want to be more sovereign individuals. So it's just the reality of it, and it's cool. So I'm curious, kind of, how has Bitcoin shaped, and with your background in nursing, traveling around, how has Bitcoin maybe changed your mindset of everything you do on a daily basis in terms of being more sovereign and being more decentralized?
Yeah, learning about money just completely changed my worldview, or it made me realize how warped my worldview was. And it really got you thinking much more about first principles. And it's like, man, how much is tied to money? Like literally everything in civilization is tied to money and value. And so it's like, oh, so maybe if you can fix the money, so many of these problems will be fixed. Fix the money, fix the world. Or the incentives will align so much better that bad players will be punished and good players will be rewarded without that corruption. And health is almost the same in a way. I mean, it's like much like we are deteriorating, or I say we, central banks of the world are deteriorating people's wealth through inflation. So too are people's health being deteriorated through like soil degradation, like all of these industrial practices of farming, or, blaming beef for things, or that's quite literally the thing that's going to regenerate the soil, right? This regenerative agriculture movement. So, if your soil is depleted, then you're not getting much nutrition. And there's so much that we don't understand or fully understand about nutrition, or perhaps we understand more than we think. We just can't explain it. Like, look, I mean, if it didn't exist 100 years ago, just don't fucking eat it. Like if people weren't doing this 100 years ago naturally, you probably should think twice before you do it. It's like that bell curve meme. It's like, just do what feels natural, and maybe that's the way to be. And so too, like the money, like stop overcomplicating it with all these different, crazy financial games. It's like, just have the currency be fixed supply or unchangeable by a small number of people, and have the food supply, get your food from a sustainable source as well, like locally. Like, what are you eating, and what are you using to purchase what you're eating? Like, that is the foundation of civilization. So that really completely changed my worldview, and it got me thinking about all sorts of things like that, right? Like, if we go back to first principles, what are the effects of this?
No, that's really good. That's actually a really good statement, because I was thinking about, like, you're sort of mentioning like how everything kind of goes back to, on some level, something to do with money. And I was thinking about anyone that really gets into the space that we've been talking about today, you'll find it either through your health journey, you'll find Bitcoin at some point, or if you get into Bitcoin, you'll eventually find you're changing stuff about your health at some point, because it just seems like all these sort of areas just sort of intermix. And that's because it does go back to money, and also mindset, and the idea of like community and how we want to live our lives. And at the end of the day, everyone like wants freedom. Everyone wants, or they think they do anyways. I actually think a lot of people think they want something, but they actually really don't want that. They just want to be told what to do or whatever. But on a face value, like, everyone wants these things. Everyone wants to be in control. And this stuff allows you to see what can get you there. And that's what I think is so cool about Bitcoin, and then like this evolution into health and all this stuff. And it's the same with all the systems. Like, I was thinking when you were talking about that, I was thinking about, I was actually thinking about me doing taxes this year, because I just filed for last year because I had to file an extension. And I was just like, there's so much just jargon in this crap, and they just do it to make you feel like you're confused. But if you know what you're reading, you actually know what to look for. And it's actually pretty simple to fill this stuff out. But most people just like get caught up in all this crap because they try to make it confusing. And it's the same in the medical system with the way insurances work, or the way stuff at hospitals are organized. And everything is sort of built in a way to confuse you, to make you not want to seek something out, because they make it seem too complicated. But if you look at it fundamentally, like you were saying, at face value, like, everything sort of comes into place when you have your value system there and you know what you want. And I think it goes back to like really deciding, like for you back in 2020, in 21 or 22, when you said you ended your ICU work and stuff like that, or started like seeing how messed up stuff was. It's once you start seeing things for what they are, and you accept that, and you begin to try and create a vision of ways you want yourself to be, or the world you want to live in, you can kind of manifest that for yourself. But none of this comes like, you didn't just wake up one day and was like, okay, well, I'm going to change this, and I'm going to start this thing and it's going to be successful. Like there's a lot of work behind what you've done that I think people don't see in this conversation. And that's a lot of what I think people need to understand is like, no one's going to get to where they want without a lot of ruthless consistency and drive and a lot of mistakes and stuff like that. But it goes back to fundamentally having that strong belief in what you want to do and having that vision, you know what I mean? And I think you can kind of speak to that too.
Well, it's kind of like, going back to first principles, it's like, well, what good is generational wealth without generational health? Why is the financial system so freaking confusing? Then you have to rely on all these other people to tell you how to do it. Why do you have to be like a professional stockbroker so you can retire one day? Like, why do you have to play these games? There's a time when it was much more simple. Same goes for health. Like, why do you have to know what all these different medications are and all these, this is your blood pressure and this and your cholesterol and all this? It's because like, it's just as confusing because much like we've been sucked into like this bullshit financial scheme from birth, we've been sucked into this bullshit food scheme from birth, right? And like we're a part of that system. And so like being an ICU nurse, like I dealt with people that were having just the absolute worst time of their entire lives. Like if you're in that hospital bed, like you have no freedom. Like your freedom is gone. You are at the mercy literally of like the hospital or of your condition. Like your freedom is gone. So generational health, generational wealth, but also like your freedom. And without either one of those things, you have no freedoms. And it's like a spectrum. The worse your health is, your freedom's gone. The worse your wealth is, your freedom's gone. You have nothing. So if you can have both of those, you are free. Now, the sinister thing is that most people have to play the game of our traditional financial system to get wealth, to be free. And most people have to play the game of like the healthcare system to get free, or at least the feeling of free. But people are just like tethered and strung along, you know. So going back, like these people were having the absolute worst time of their lives. Their families were having the worst time of their lives. It cost them an obscene amount of money, right? And the problems weren't being fixed. Like, I guess you could say, let's see, what we were doing in the hospital is we weren't helping people live longer. We were helping people die slower. Like there was no life or living in that. Like it was a lifetime of, let's say, poor dietary choices. Let's say it's not even their fault. Let's blame the food pyramid, the industrial food complex, like apparatus, right? Let's blame that. But like they are a cog in that wheel. And, you know, the later stages in their life where these people could maybe like impact their family for generations with knowledge and participate in family gatherings, their energy and their mind share is focused on just like not dying or dying slower because of heart disease or diabetes or all of the above or whatever, right? Like, or people are just living in fear from, let's say, like COVID back, you know, a while back. Whenever, if you go back to first principles, it's literally just their health and lifestyle choices are what led to that fear to begin with, right? And it just winds up being this horrible, like, scenario, right? Where you have no freedom, you have no health, you have no wealth. It's insane. So yeah, I just want to go on that rant for a second because, and eventually I realized like, I'm not helping anything here. Like I'm helping people in that very moment. But they're going to be back and there's nothing that's being fixed here. I'm a cog in the wheel, just like they're a cog in the wheel. You know, it's crazy. And I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think that realization is like extremely powerful because it's sad, right? And it goes back to a lot of the mindset issues with free handouts and just offering a helping hand. You want to help these people who are sick, but actually if you help them, you're probably doing them a disservice. And if you help them in the immediate, they're just going to go back home and keep doing the same things. And they're ultimately stuck in this negative feedback loop for life unless you really educate them on the early stage and try and motivate them to care about, you know, taking responsibility for their health, I guess in this example. But it's so true. It's really sad. And I think it is a byproduct of a fiat monetary system, having, epidemics of chronic disease and, just this fake food nonsense and the tarnishing of very easy and effective health hacks, or whatever you want to call them, like going out in the sun, literally just eating real food and getting your feet on the earth, being in nature. But it's cool when you look at things through this lens of personal responsibility, individual sovereignty, because then you can't unsee any of this. And you're like, wow, this is all connected. This is all a reason due to centralized systems and a broken monetary system. But now you have to play, well, you can take the simple route and, just like you're saying, don't eat anything that didn't exist 100, 150 years ago. Kind of just go outside and mitigate stress, move, lift weights, what have you, which is a very effective way to do things. And you don't need all the markers under the sun. But, if you really want to heal, or maybe you have to heal, you kind of have to be a part-time nutritionist, a part-time researcher, and then you're playing part-time investor as well. So what has this led to for a lot of people? The quality of their actual job has gone down. They don't do a good job. Like if you're having to play all these part-time roles, your actual job, you're not going to be doing that good of a job because you are split between all these different things. And I feel like that personally quite a bit, but obviously I'm in a weird transitional period here and I'm passionate about these things, diving deeper into them. But I think that's the downside of society at a high level. So it's interesting to think about. I'm excited really about the connection that people are making with health and with Bitcoin and personal sovereignty spanning across their whole lifestyle. So I think there's a lot more to come in this area. And you're doing it right, living in Texas, eating real meat outside the city. So that's I think a good start. But Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Where can people find out more about Oshi and contact you in general?
Yeah, so the best way to find out about Oshi is just oshi.tech. That's our website. We do have an app where you can still kind of do like this, buy things with Lightning using Bitcoin, doing all that. But our new product you can check out at oshi.tech. You can reach me on Twitter. You can email me, michael@oshi.tech. Happy to answer any questions, whether you're a business looking to get involved in Bitcoin or you're interested in some of our products. Happy to help. But it's been great. Thanks for having me on. I really love the intersection between Bitcoin and health. So wealth and health. And like you said, it's like, it's almost odd in a way that, it's odd, yet it's like this movement, how we're so passionate about things that for the longest time, no one ever had to even really think about.
Yeah.
Like health and just money. Like those were just, people could focus on creating immense value for others and being happy and leading happy lives and raising wonderful families. So I guess my question for you all, what about this? Like, let's say we win. All right. We're going to win. The money is Bitcoin. Everything is healing. People are eating nutrient dense foods. Monsanto is done. Like all of these things, where do we go? Right. Like, cause we have to, eventually we get so worked up about these things. It's like me in particular with Bitcoin. One day, Bitcoin is going to be like the internet. And I'm not going to have like internet meetups, and maybe we won't have health meetups. Like we're just going to have
just meetups,
gatherings,
yeah,
social gatherings, because all that other shit has been taken care of. We're good. The money is fixed. Food is fixed. Our bodies are fixed. It's going to be interesting. What do you guys have
I
to say?
I can say this for certain. There's always going to be something. There's always going to be some instigation that's trying to tear down all the goodness that I think is going to be built. Doesn't mean that that's going to like ruin it per se, but there's always, that's just a human nature thing. I don't think we can get by and be like super, I don't know, like doing kumbaya in a circle or something like that, even though that'd be kind of cool. But I do think that there is a lot of brighter things ahead. And I think it'd be great to just have sort of like peace of mind But like I said, there's always going to be, it's just hard because we're innately animals and we're innately tribal. So there's always going to be this sort of like tribalism bashing of some sort. But I'd like to see it I'd like to see it where it's like in a more Bitcoin fashion, where it's like, that's just like how it is. I'd love to see Monsanto gone. Like, I'll settle at that.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have similar things, but like higher quality. And because higher quality, systems, they take more effort, right? So we'll have more people thinking about, like regenerative agriculture, like sourcing food the right way, educating people. We'll be able to actually maybe figure out, the quantum side of biology and computing, and we'll just be able to achieve more things, I think, as a society at a higher quality of life for like the average person. But it is interesting to kind of play that game of how it's going to play out. And it's probably not going to be all rainbows and sunshine at the end
Hopefully
of the day.
More rainbows, though.
It's going to be a rocky road to get there probably, but that's low time preference thinking right there. So
yeah, maybe we'll be surprised by how quickly, all things considered, things kind of heal,
Yeah.
And fiat is tied to so much of these, chronic
divisions,
ailments of society.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be very interesting. Imagine all the mind share that no longer has to think about all these complex banking bullshit and all these, doctors that have the right, mindset at heart that are focused on statins instead of more enriching things and, civilization enhancing things. It's that's the Renaissance.
That's right.
We'll build beautiful buildings and have nice artwork again or something.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was about to say. We'll have more time to really focus on things from like a beauty and aesthetic perspective that lasts like a really long time, which is exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive.
It is,
regardless. But awesome, Michael. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it. And we'll link all Oshi and your Twitter in the show notes. And thanks everyone for tuning in to another episode of Decentralized Radio. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.